And talk a little bit about purpose. We all know that purpose is important because if you don't have a purpose, you don't know where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, how can you ever get there? Right. So, but what really is the power of purpose? What's the point of purpose? Well, let me share something with you. Not another person on this planet wants you particularly to get rich, maybe other than your mother and maybe your wife. Right? So truly, how do you get other people enrolled in what you're doing? How do you get them behind you to accomplish what it is that you want? Well, let me tell you a little concept here. It's called the circles of good and why it's important to have a grand purpose, if you will. It's an old quote that says, the higher your aims and the vaster your desires, the more energy you will have for their fulfillment. Right? The higher your aims, vaster your desires, the more energy you will have for their fulfillment. Now, why is that? Let's think about it. Right? Let's think of a concept that's called the circles of good. So imagine a series of concentric circles, like a target, if you will. Right? And in the middle of that circle is you. Right? Is you. Then on the next circle is your family. Right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about alignment, right? And purpose. So can you do something that's good for you, but not necessarily good for your family? Oh yeah, I can go to Vegas, blow all the money, or you can do some other things, or go out drinking all the time. Good for me, but not necessarily good for my family, right? So there's a misalignment, right? So if I do something that's good for me and good for my family, I got all those people behind me, right? If I have a great relationship with my wife's going to support me, right? In my endeavors and what I'm up to. If I have a lousy relationship with my wife, she's not going to support me. She's going to detract from it. I'm going to waste a tremendous amount of energy in the family unit. Okay, understanding, right? Good for you, good for the family. Next circle, the community, right? Can you do something that's good for you, good for the family, but not necessarily good for the community? If you ever watch The Sopranos, there's a prime example, right? Thuggery and mafiaism is not necessarily good for the community, good for the family, could be good for the person, but once again, you have a blockage, right? So if it's not good for the community, what's the community going to do? Just like if you watch The Sopranos, they're going to throw you in jail, or the FBI is going to bug your house and make your life miserable, right? They're out of alignment. They're not going to support you. The community is going to want to crush you. Think about this for your business, right? So good for you, good for the family, good for the community. Let's take a step out further. What about good for the country, right? If it's doing what's good for your community, right? Good for you, good for the family, good for the community. Say you're like dumping toxic sludge in the next state, right? Next state's not going to appreciate that, right? There's going to be laws. The country's going to fight against you and suppress you into that small little area, right? The higher your aims, the vaster your desires. The higher your aims, right? The vaster your desires, the more energy you will have for their fulfillment, because you're going to have people behind you. So if it's good for you, good for the family, good for the community, good for the country, oh my goodness, we're getting on a bigger scale here, right? This is where big businesses come in. But what if it's not good for the global community? What if it's not good for the planet, right? As we see today, like the oil company, CO2 and all that stuff, right? There's been a pushback now, right? That the world is beginning to push back on carbon-producing companies. Right? So once again, you're getting more. So if you get the world behind your idea, right, like the internet, look at how that spread, right? Look at the power that's been created from that, right? It's about alignment. The higher your aims, the vaster your desires, the more energy you will have for their fulfillment, right? The higher you play up on that ladder, the more you can have others enrolled behind you, sharing their energy with you to move your goals and desires forward. Right? Simple reason why Colgate toothpaste makes so much money, because it's good for everybody. Right? It's good. Right? Then there's another thing about nuclear energy of why there's such resistance there, because it's not necessarily good for the countries or the communities at current level technology. Right? So once again, let's take this back to our business. Right? What's the purpose? Right? Well, how do I get other people behind me? Right? So if your business is just about you getting wealthy, it's going to stay very small. Now, there's nothing wrong with getting wealthy, but once again, other people don't care about you getting wealthy. What they care about is themselves getting wealthy. Now, if you could figure out that little formula, your business is unbounded.